You know, the most common belief about customer churn? It's a lie. What if the decision to cancel your service isn't made at the exit survey, but weeks, maybe even months earlier? What if it's all signaled by a single, unique metric? Today, we are diving deep into what's called the magic number, a metric that can actually predict and prevent customer churn by showing us the hidden truth about why users really decide to leave. Let's get into it.
This statement, it really challenges a core assumption for so many businesses. We're all trained to see churn as this final act. You know, the click on the cancel subscription button, the feedback on the exit survey. We treat it like it's this one big dramatic event at the very end of the customer relationship, a moment where we have to fight back with last-minute discounts and desperate pleas to stay.
But here's the thing, that's just a misconception. The real decision to leave, that actual point of no return, it often happens silently, weeks, sometimes months before they ever click that button. It's not some emotional outburst, it's a quiet failure. It's the failure of a user to do one specific, measurable thing that unlocks the true value of your product. And that is the hidden truth we are going to uncover today.
Okay, so here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the churn paradox, this illusion that really tricks most companies. From there, we'll trace the origins of this idea back to the hunt for the aha moment. Then we'll get really practical. How to find your own magic number, understand the psychology that makes it so powerful, and build a system to actually engineer user success. And by the end, you'll see exactly how all these pieces fit together to create a powerful retention engine.
So let's start with that central paradox. Most companies treat churn reactively. They wait until the very last second, and then they throw discounts and pleas at customers right at the moment of cancellation. But this is like showing up to fight a battle that was already lost. The path to churn was set in motion weeks earlier, marked by these subtle, almost invisible signals that most of us are just trained to ignore, because we're so focused on the finish line.
Look, the reactive approach is a losing game. By the time a customer hits cancel, their mind is almost always made up. They've already checked out, emotionally and practically. The proactive approach, though, it completely changes the game. It's not about fighting churn at the 11th hour, it's about preventing it by spotting the absolute earliest warning signs of disengagement. It's a total mindset shift, from being a gatekeeper trying to block the exit to becoming a guide who ensures every user succeeds. And the key to this whole proactive strategy is the magic number. This is the one unique usage threshold that basically dictates whether a customer is going to survive long term. And let's be really clear here. Don't confuse this with generic stuff like daily active users or time spent in the app. This is a highly specific, quantifiable action that is totally unique to your product. It's the bright line that separates the customers who stick around for years from the ones who are gone after a month. Honestly, trying to operate without it is like navigating in the dark without a compass.
So where did this whole idea even come from? Well, it didn't just appear out of thin air. It was actually born from a crisis in the tech industry that forced this radical shift in thinking. You see, the days of growth at all costs were coming to an end, and companies were forced to stop focusing only on getting new customers and start obsessing over keeping the ones they already had.
This created a real pressure cooker situation. First off, customer acquisition costs, or CAC, the price to get a new customer in the door, were just skyrocketing. It was becoming way too expensive to just buy your way to growth. At the exact same time, investors started demanding high net dollar retention, or NDR. That's a fancy metric that basically shows your existing customers aren't just staying, but they're actually spending more money over time. The only way to solve this puzzle was to maximize customer lifetime value, or LTV, the total money a single customer brings in over their entire time with you. All of a sudden, retention wasn't a nice-to-have anymore. It was the absolute key to survival.
The first real clues started to pop up as these product-led growth companies began hunting for the aha moment. We've all heard of it. It's that instant a user's eyes light up the moment they truly get the core value of a product and see exactly how it solves their problem. And what they discovered was this moment wasn't just a feeling. It was tied to a specific, measurable action. They found that long-term retention didn't depend on a user seeing every single feature. Nope. It depended on them successfully completing one critical task.
Two famous examples make this crystal clear. The growth team at Facebook discovered that if a new user connected with 7 friends in their first 10 days, their long-term retention went through the roof. Why? Because the product instantly transformed from an empty profile into a living, breathing social network. Same thing for Twitter. Their key was following at least 30 people, with about a third of them following you back. This turned a blank, silent timeline into a personalized, dynamic newsfeed. In both cases, that one action unlocked the core value. And this proved a vital point. Churn isn't a failure of service, it's a failure to build a habit.
So if this metric exists, you're probably asking, how in the world do you find it for your business? Well, that brings us to the core mechanism. Let's pop the hood and look at the data-driven diagnostic loop that lets any company, in any industry, uncover its own unique magic number.
It's a really systematic four-step loop. First up is behavior mapping. You basically list out every meaningful action a user can take that shows they're getting value. Second, and this is the most critical step, is the correlation test, where you figure out which of those actions is most strongly linked to long-term retention. Third is threshold identification. You pinpoint the exact number of times that action needs to happen in a specific window of time. And finally, proactive intervention. You use all this knowledge to actively guide users toward that goal.
Let's just pause here for a second, because the correlation test is the absolute heart of this entire system. This is the moment of discovery. This is where you find your magic number. You take all those user behaviors you mapped out, and you run a statistical analysis comparing each one to your long-term retention data, say 90 or 180 days out. What you're looking for is the one action that has the strongest, most undeniable link to a customer sticking with you. It really is about finding the signal in all the noise.
Okay, check out this hypothetical example. It makes it really clear. You can see that just logging in has a super weak correlation with retention. It's a vanity metric. It doesn't mean anything. Inviting a colleague is a bit better. That's a positive sign. But then, boom, the data reveals a massive spike. Users who created 3 reports in their first week had a staggering 78% retention rate. That's the signal. It's not just about using the product. It's about using it to accomplish the core task it was built for, and doing it with a certain frequency. That right there is how you find your magic number.
So now we know what the magic number is and how to find it, but to really truly leverage it, we have to understand why it works. Because this isn't just some statistical quirk. It's a phenomenon that's deeply rooted in human psychology. This metric has so much power because it taps into the fundamental drivers of our behavior.
There are 2 core psychological triggers at play here. The first is the principle of consistency. We are just wired to act in ways that are consistent with our past actions and how we see ourselves. The second is the need for competence. We are all fundamentally driven to feel effective, capable, and in control. The magic number brilliantly leverages both of these triggers to build incredibly powerful and lasting user habits.
So, picture a new user. They're basically on one of 2 paths. If they fail to hit the magic number, they never get that rush of competence. They don't form a positive identity with the product. The little voice in their head says, this tool isn't for me, or I'm not getting it, which is the emotional runway to churn. But the user who does hit that threshold feels a sense of mastery. They achieve competence. They establish an identity as a successful user. That voice in their head changes to, hey, I'm good at this. And because of that principle of consistency, they are far, far more likely to keep behaving in a way that reinforces that successful identity, which means sticking around.
All right, understanding the theory is one thing, but putting it into practice is what really counts. So in this next section, we're going to build an actual, actionable framework around this insight. This is where we go from just discovery to systematically engineering the success of every single user who signs up. The very first principle is that your magic number has to be based on frequency and depth, not just a one-time action. A user trying a feature once doesn't build a habit. It's the repetition of that core value-driving action that rewires their brain and makes your product feel indispensable. Think of it like learning an instrument. Playing a single chord one time doesn't make you a guitarist. It's the consistent practice that builds the skill and the habit. That's why the metric is create 3 reports, not just create 1 report. Frequency is the absolute bedrock of habituation.
Now, this next step is critical. Don't just hope users stumble upon the magic number. You have to engineer the path to it. This means making that threshold the single, non-negotiable goal of your entire onboarding experience. Redesign everything, your welcome emails, your in-app tooltips, your tutorials, to remove all friction and guide every single user directly to that specific moment of success. A user's very first win in your product should be them hitting your magic number, period.
And finally, you have to segment your users based on their progress toward that magic number and intervene the moment they fall behind. So if a user is supposed to create 3 reports in 7 days, and by day 4 they've created none, they should be automatically flagged as a high churn risk. That flag should trigger personalized interventions, a helpful video, a targeted email, maybe an offer for a quick support call, to guide them back to that critical path before they drift away and become disengaged. This is what true proactive retention actually looks like.
So when you combine all these principles, finding your magic number,
Understanding the psychology behind it and actively engineering the path to success, you build more than just a tactic. You create a complete philosophy for sustainable growth. You build a retention engine.
And this brings us to the ultimate takeaway. Churn is not an accident. It's not some mystery. It is the predictable, logical result of a failure to establish a habit. It is not the user's fault for leaving. It is your system's fault for not successfully guiding them to value. Churn is a design failure. And you know, the good news about design failures is that they can be fixed with a better blueprint.
Let's end on this thought. The best marketing, the best product design, it doesn't just push people through a funnel, it pulls them toward value. It pulls them toward competence and mastery. The most sustainable, powerful growth comes from meticulously engineering the success of your customers. Because when you do that, retention, well, it takes care of itself.